Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I've got a pretty decent upload to share with you guys. Before we get into today's upload and the announcements, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help this channel to continue to grow and go. All of those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fanfiction, and scary voice acting. Stories that, well, they really don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link and give those stories a listen. You may just like what you hear. Now, enough of that. Let's get on with today's upload, shall we? Couple of announcements. Dan, the ambulance passenger in Connecticut, emailed me a couple days ago after he was on. Apparently, a family member had an encounter, and they want to share it. And he is either going to be appearing back on the show or sending me the encounter. Also, I have been reaching out to people who I have narrated their encounters to get them on. I reached out to a gentleman about a week ago, and he replied back that he could not share his encounter. He did send me the full encounter. When he first contacted me, it was very brief, and he sent me his full encounter. The second encounter I'm going to do tonight is actually there's going to be two military encounters. And I really would like to have you on. If you are listening and you recognize your encounter, I'm going to email you also. I'd like to have you on the show. Also, Jerry has a friend, Jerry from Virginia has a friend who was with him during that last Dogman encounter when they were shooting. His mom has two encounters that she is going to share. Unfortunately, she had some health issues, so the son hopefully will be coming on and sharing both of her encounters that she shared with him. So enough of this. Let's get into the encounters. Today's first encounter, I reached out to this gentleman and he responded he could not. So this is the email he sent me. Hello, Jeffrey, my friend. With careful consideration, even if I do this anonymously, there are still possibilities of being identified, which would be no fault of your own government and agencies within governments can do things that can destroy your life in an instant. I must decline your offer of telling my story on the air, but I would have done for you. I have written it out to the best of my recollection and memory to go a bit more into depth without compromising the State Security Act. I hope you find more complete story of interest. I wrote it out with as much information as I could possibly give you. I hope to hear the full story on your channel if you're willing to retell it. Hello again, Jeffrey. The encounter by the Brigadier General. This encounter took place just over 30 years ago. Now, in 1989/90, I am now a retired Brigadier General from the IDF military forces, but still work for my government. A great deal of all of this is still classified by my government. Personnel, country of origin, and places cannot be named. I am sorry. I can tell you more than what I did in the first story, as I did not want to drag it out. I was a full-ranked colonel at the time and head of some important Black Op operations. I was summoned by my commanding officer and informed I was going to be the head of a very unusual mission overseas, somewhere in Europe, and all of the men were specially picked. I was told this mission was to locate, retrieve, or take out target or targets. I was handed a file that stamped and read top secret classified. My CEO said only, "You and the government agent that you will meet at the other end may see this." The government agent was female. We will name her Laura. She was placed for a number of reasons. One, to give the impression of a family unit. The other reasons are classified. For most part of the journey to the safe house was pretty uneventful, and in the middle of nowhere, nothing out of the ordinary. And as we drove into the area, you felt the atmosphere completely change. For one moment, you heard the birds and the nature all around you. Once we drove into the area, that suddenly came to an abrupt halt, and you felt suddenly very uncomfortable. I thought this was odd, but didn't take that much notice of it. The house was 3 stories in height. As we came to a stop and got out of the vehicles, Agent Laura, knowing our ETA was waiting on the doorstep, our arrival did not go unnoticed by one of the only 2 families that remained in the area. The neighbor came over to us, who we will call Jonathan. He said it was nice to have a new people moving into the area, as all the other families had suddenly packed up and never came back. I will fast forward it a bit, as this was just over 2 months for this operation. Over the period of time that we were at the safe house, we had a number of strange encounters. I was informed that a dark figure had been seen running through the woods, tapping on the glass late at night. Strange noises, scratch marks, huge piles of shit. Jonathan was also the neighbor that had the golden retriever. One evening he came over and he was telling us about the other families that lived there who had young children and animals, cats, small to medium, to even large dogs that had disappeared over a matter of months. Let's get to the night in question. It was one of those extremely hot Indian summers that we were experiencing. I shared my quarters with my captain, who we will call Jay. He was the second highest rank officer to myself. It was so incredibly hot that night you couldn't sleep, and if you did, you didn't sleep very well. I woke up around 3-ish, and all of a sudden I heard this dog suddenly cry out in pain. And then it was quiet. About 5 or 6 minutes later, I heard this thud in the backyard. I continued to lay in my bunk, and then all of a sudden I heard something going crunch, crunch, crunch. And then you heard a ripping sound, and again you heard that crunch, crunch, crunch. I quietly got out of my bunk and walked over to the window. At the bottom of the yard was this massive black shape that had somewhat of a silvery shine, thanks to the moonlight that was out that night. Whatever it was sitting on its back legs, its back straight like a person's, crouching down. Its head was massive with 2 very pointed ears on the top of its head, twitching about frantically, listening for any sound it could hear. Captain J was still sleeping, much to my surprise, and all of a sudden I heard this voice. A voice that was very guttural, very deep and powerful. I heard it say, "First of all, I know you are there watching me." It started to stand and look right at me. The same time I saw these deep, yellowy, orange, burning eyes suddenly appear. As it stood up, the head turned over the shoulder. You could see the twist in the midsection as its shoulder came into view. Its fur was black, extremely shiny, and long in certain places. What details you could see with the moonlight was very impressive. This creature's torso was extremely rippled, with muscle extremely powerful. The same with what you could see of its legs. Its arms were extremely long and hairy. The digits you could see its nails were extremely long, and also pointed, which could do considerable damage. And then it spoke again. "I can hear you, and I can smell you," as this creature stood up. It was about 7 feet tall, maybe taller. I saw what it was eating. It had killed Jonathan's golden retriever. All I could see what was left was the 2 back legs and its tail. All of a sudden I heard Jay say, "What in the fucking hell was that, sir?" I stopped and looked at Jay for no more than a blink of an eye. I looked back out the window, and whatever it was, jumped the fence and went. I said to the captain, under no circumstances is this to go down into your report come daybreak. I woke the captain up, and I said, I'm going into the yard. I walked down to the bottom, what was about 100 to 110 yards or so. All I saw was blood and fur and pieces of flesh. Found the dog's head in the corner. It had clearly been ripped off and thrown. I went looking around and found a spade to bury what remained of the dog, hosed down the area to clean up the blood in the mess. But how will I ever forget that voice and those eyes that looked right through mine? A day later, Jonathan comes over and asks if we had seen his dog. We had to say no, but we knew the truth of what had happened. 9 days after this, we completed our mission and got back into the cars, back to the airport, and then home. That's the full encounter from the Brigadier General. Now, like I said, I truly wish that he could come on the show, but I do understand. Wow, what an encounter. I do have his email. I got a couple questions I'm going to ask, and then, if acceptable, I will share them with you guys. On to the next encounter. Jeff, sorry it's taken me longer to get this to you than I had stated. The night itself is a good memory. It's the other memories and feelings that come unbidden to the forefront of my mind that deters me from really trying to relive those good times. Okay, I ask you to dedicate this story to our American warriors that come home unable to adjust or to find the balance between our actions to protect our way of life, loved ones, our nation, and our inability to live within it once we return. My brother from another mother, my best friend, partner in crime, Sergeant M.A. Thilbert, U.S. Marine Corps. In 2008, a year or so after this story had taken place, Mark ended his personal struggles. We were both out of the Corps, and I was back in Iraq as a civilian contractor at the time. We lost touch, and I found out 3 years later that he had taken his life, and that I had missed his funeral. I live every day thinking I may have been able to help him adjust if I had just been there for him. None of our old squad knew about it because he didn't let anyone know he was having trouble getting back into our old life. But we each felt partially responsible for him because we were not there for him, even though logic states the opposite. The hurt will always be there. Though most of us seemingly find our place in the world again, in our heads we know we were always outside the window looking in. I want those guys to know we all have our issues, and we might be by ourselves, but we are never alone. There is always a brother willing to help if you just let him know you could use his help. And many of us need the help of helping our brothers. All right, how about some Dogman? So there we are, a company of Marines watching the backsides of some Army Special Force guys. That reminded us of the high school varsity quarterback that gets the glory and the girl at the expense of the badass linebacker that plows the enemy and holds them at bay so the QB can get his ball across the line. Jealous much? Nah, we're Marines. We know that without us, war is just a game. So we set up a 3 hasty observation posts in a triangle surrounding the target building. A somewhat squat, 3-story apartment-style building with a main stairwell connecting the 3 floors. We are there to catch any of the bad guys or squirters that escape the SF assault force. Also to keep nosy neighbors in the stands and off of our field. My squad is assigned to securing the immediate grounds and area around one of the buildings we are set up on. It's about dark 30, maybe 0200-ish in the morning. It's dark on the outside edge of a sleeping is Kandahar, Iraq. The stars are out like hundreds of winking diamonds against a black velvet sky. With our night vision goggles flipped down, our world becomes a variation of light versus dark shades of green reflecting the objects in our vision, as all fading to black at the furthest distances. I'm on one knee, facing away from the corner of the building I'm covering. I become comfortable with the idea that we are the only ones awake at the time. We've had no surprises so far, no shots fired, no scared shitless, screaming, crying civilians encountering the highly armed, bulky Marines, silently and methodically clearing every room, corner, and cabinet within the building they are going to call home for the few hours. In my building, there is an extended family of Iraqis living there. 2 brothers, their wives, and children all gathered and placed in a room on the ground floor. Most people during the summer choose to sleep on the roof of their homes at night, due to the heat and horribly intermittent electrical grid. They were understandably highly irritated at armed Americans until they were guaranteed $2,000 US for their troubles, if they were compliant and did not cause problems. We suddenly became more like honored guests instead of invading assholes. Funny how that works. Our Terp, linguistic and cultural interpretator, we will call David, is a master at befriending, calming, and consoling scared, irritated people, whose lives we rudely intrude upon. As all of this is going on inside of my building, myself and 9 other Marines are outside, all alone with our sins. When out of nowhere there is this thump. It's to my back left. I glance over with my head and see the outline of a large, green, man-like figure squatting on 2 odd-shaped legs and 1 arm, the other arm outstretched for balance. First thought is one of my Marines just fell off of the roof. It wouldn't be the first time a Marine fell off a building. Second thought, that ain't no Marine. What the fuck? As I turn my body, I'm raising my M16A4 service rifle to place my hollow sight on the center mass of this thing, and it leaps. Another 30 or so feet away, and it lands on all 4s and runs off towards the nearest alley, and turns right out of my line of sight. This thing is as big as a half-grown horse. It's as fast as a fleeting thought. A couple of seconds later, another team of Marines on the rooftop see this humongous dog streak by, jumping a large wadi, an irrigation ditch, and running into a huge field of sunflowers. There the Marines lose sight of it. There's little radio chatter about who let the dogs out, and it was forgotten until we were back at base, debriefed, and AAR written up. Then we began questioning what it was that we had seen. Number 1. It landed like a bipedal man, ran off on 4 legs like a dog. Number 2. It was shaggy, like it was covered in hair, or a man wearing a ghillie suit. Number 3. It had a hairy tail. Number 4. We clearly had seen a snout and a flopping tongue as it ran off. Number 5. It fully understood where we were and the quickest way to escape us. Number 6. Other than the Marines on the ground, nobody else heard it make a sound. The Marines in my building had been in position on the roof when they thought where a pile of bedding came alive and jumped off of the roof. They never saw it move. They only noticed the pile was gone after they heard it hit the deck. Then they realized that they had not been alone on that rooftop. Number 7, our saw gunners had thermal optics and never registered any heat signature from it as it ran through their fields of fire. In any given Iraqi city, there is a scent you cannot escape. It smells like a combination of old burnt motor oil, nearly decomposed roadkill, and very stale cigarettes. You eventually get used to it. According to the guys on the roof, they had noticed something that smelled like rotten carcass combined with a very harsh ammonia-like scent of pig shit. A few days later, while on patrol, we stopped by to check on the family in the building we used that night. We had David ask them who was the guy that was on that roof that night. They vehemently swore no one was with them on the roof or in the building that night. David described what happened that night. The two brothers turned pale as a ghost and called David and us into the other room, closed the door, and whispered so low that the woman would not be able to overhear the conversation. The brothers and David called it a salat, a werewolf, dogman, shape-shifting type, evil being of some of their legends. I hope you find our sighting worthy enough for you to present on your channel. I enjoy your work and the manner in which you describe your stories. You have a way of making your listeners feel like they are hearing everything from the actual people that had the encounters. They don't sound overproduced or secondhand. Each story seems like it's an original. They are kind of more real life and not something designed for entertainment purposes only. Thanks for what you do, brother. I will answer any questions may need answering, or any details you might further need explained. Use this citing however you wish. Sergeant, redacted, U.S. Marine Corps 0341. The reason why I redacted it is because I am not going to release his name, anonymity first, and when he comes on, hopefully he does, he will share that with us or use a name to protect his identity. Anyway, what an amazing encounter. Now, I hope you guys truly enjoyed tonight's upload. I forgot to mention, Bo, I will be getting in touch with you. You called me today. I missed your call. I had a rough day yesterday, and I kind of overslept until 6 p.m. today. I want to have Bo on as well. A lot of you guys know him from Vic Cundiff, but he approached me first with his story, and I narrated it before he was on Vic's. Unfortunately, I was not able to do interviews until just recently. If the story that I just used last you hear again, please contact me. I'm going to be emailing you as well. What an amazing couple of military encounters. These things just don't stop or draw the line. Just never ever seems to... I'm always questioning, like, what the hell? Why is the exact answer. And then I'm reading things every day. I'm constantly just reading just weird things that I find and putting together these more, they sound crazy to me in my head as I'm, discussing them in my brain. But who's to know? Nobody really knows where these creatures come from. The other day I was reading a book and they were discussing how extraterrestrials would travel the universes and befriend other extraterrestrial beings who were more capable and stronger than them. And there was a dog-like race of extraterrestrials. And then I got thinking, wow, man, what if that's what we have here? What if the Anunnaki were right, or the Anasazi writings that are, in the caves, the hieroglyphs in the caves of America. Just so many questions left unanswered. That, I don't think we will ever have a definite 100% answer, no matter who we talk to, because I don't think anybody truly knows where these things came from. I mean, unless my little goofball idea that I just shared with you is, true, and I find the extraterrestrial gray that brought them here. But, like I said, it's just an idea. It's not something I believe in 100%. I like to ponder strange things sometimes, and who knows. But yeah, what a great set of encounters. All right, guys. So, like I said, I'm going to have a couple people for interviews, and with that, I'm going to bid you guys farewell, and everyone stay safe, healthy, and smart.